I always thought of my mother as different from other mothers. She sounded different from other mothers. She pronounced words differently, and she had a past that other mothers didn't have.
She loved to sew, she loved to embroider, she loved creating beautiful things. Our mother was very driven to tell the story. She wanted us to know it, she wanted us to remember.
It was a way of connecting me and my sister with the family that she had lost. Her mother, her father, her sisters, her brother, nearly everyone that she loved in the world. At some point, she really began to look to me to be the storyteller. I had just read The Diary of Anne Frank, which came out around then. And so I started writing it. But I knew even then that nobody could really tell my mother's story. It was her story to tell.
I wanted to show my kids how I grew up. And I was trying desperately, but I never drew anything in my life. I said, well, I'm gonna try. And I still see my house the way it was. And I just drew the lines, and then I started filling it out with acrylic work. And then I made this straw roof, sort of. Now, when I finished the house, I was really satisfied the way it looked. That's the way it looked.
And once she found that way, it just poured out of her.
We grew up in Brooklyn, in a working-class neighborhood. My father worked as a manager for a supermarket, and until I was about 10, my mother was at home. Very often while she was cooking, I would be sitting at the kitchen table, and she would tell me stories. She might, for example, be making a potato kugel, and she would tell me about how her mother used to make potato kugels and growing the potatoes and then going to get the eggs from the chickens. And so she would create this whole other world for me of her life before the war. My mother grew up in a little tiny village in the center of Poland, and where she came from, everything was done by animals. They had no cars, no machines, no electricity, no running water.
My childhood home in the village of Nishik, Poland. I am carrying Voda up the hill to our house. My sister Manya waits for me. My brother Ruben is standing with the wagon. My father and my sister Hannah are in front of the house, along with my mother, who holds my youngest sister, Leah.
All the Jews raised their chickens. They all have chickens, and a few people had the cows for milking.
And she recalls swimming in the river and the cows grazing.
She was very happy at what she had created because she was able to show us what her childhood home looked like.
The celebration of the Jewish holidays was central to their lives. It was how they marked the passage of time.
Shavuos 1938. My brother and sisters followed as I walked on stilts to our grandparents' house.
My brother was always the one that they would make toys, and I was the one to test them. So he built these tall stilts, and I was supposed to walk on them. And all the kids are following me, and my brother's following me, and see if I'm gonna fall down. But I made it all the way to the Zaydis house.